Hi there. I'm here with Perry Hewitt, the Chief Digital Officer at Harvard University. Hi, Perry.
Hey Katie, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. We actually have spring out here in Boston, so I'm doing great.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear it. I'll actually be out there next week. So great. So Perry is, as I mentioned, the Chief Digital Officer at Harvard. Previously, she was the VP of Marketing at Crimson Hexagon, which is a social monitoring and analytics tool. So Perry, tell me about your role as Chief Digital Officer. I know you're the first one at Harvard. So what does your role look like?
So I see it as a sort of a catalytic role at Harvard to help the university think about digital strategy as it affects primarily communications and engagement. So I sit within central administration working a lot with the public affairs and communications and alumni affairs and development to say, how do we think about interacting with our constituents in this odd new digital age? And think about user experience and user experience design as a competency that we use in all our interactions, whether that's more on the Harvard X learning side or thinking about, the user experience design social strategy for, how we reach to each of those groups of the public, the media, and alumni.
Great. So how did you come to oversee digital for Harvard? I mentioned, you were at Crimson Hexagon before. So how has that
Clearly, they're
happened?
looking for someone with a checkered past, so I was the
Yeah.
perfect fit. Now, they found my background's been in three. I've been lucky to have jobs both on the client side at places like Lotus Development Corporation and Harcourt. I was at Lotus in '97, which I was, were pretty early years for the commercial internet, thinking about, web presences and, content marketing wasn't a term yet, but that was a lot of what we thought about in terms of presenting Lotus's story to the world. I've been on the side with, software companies. And on the startup side with, Ars Digita and most recently Crimson Hexagon. I think I got a lot of relevant experience at a company called Razorfish that did, interactive design for a couple of years. So I think sitting on all three sides of that equation were very helpful in terms of coming to Harvard and thinking about how do we work effectively with vendors when we launch big digital projects? And how do we think about measuring the results of what we've done? Because I've been on the client side before. On the agency side, you kill yourself to get to the launch and it gets out, and you hope for the best and prepare for the best, but then you're on to the next project. On the client side, you need to think about the day two problem. How the day after it launches, who owns it? How do you think about governance, maintenance, and advancing your digital properties? So I think that mix of experience, put me in a good position to come here, and being here has been terrific. It's been one big learning opportunity, so it's been great.
Sure, definitely. So, being, the first chief digital officer at Harvard, what do you think the biggest challenge is for people in similar roles that are looking to drive digital innovation in large organizations like Harvard?
I think whether it's sort of on the edu side or the .com side, I think it's really hard to develop the consensus needed when you have a large organization. And it's hard in organizations that have a lot of legacy, and this is a very tactical answer, but we have a lot of legacy sort of software systems. How do you do a quick pivot in order to, provide the experience your users want? And it is interesting when you see new companies spring up and they're able to offer mobile, from day one, or the perfect, integration of audio and video assets. Those things are harder to affect when you're dealing with the legacy system. So that's one of the challenges. I think one of the big opportunities is, I think, in the early 2000s when you talked about social media and blogging, it was still very much, should we do it? How should we do it? In 2006, 2007, when Twitter came out, it's who has an account, why do they have an account? But now I think we're really thinking about what is this third wave in which we are all active participants in creating and sharing content, and we're all, the consumerization of IT has really affected the enterprise in a way I think it hasn't yet affected SMB, because people are not settling for substandard experiences, and people are demanding the high-level consumer experience they have at home in their workplace, and that has real implications for transformation.
Sure, and a big component of that, of course, is the idea of connected experiences and connecting experiences across touch points and devices and things. And a while back, you wrote a post on your blog, which I'm a really big fan of. You posted something about the growing number of mobile addicts, and I think that of course, that's shifting the way that people are designing experiences now. How is that changing the way that Harvard is thinking about delivering the digital experience?
I think one of the really interesting things about that report was that it wasn't all teenagers. I do think sometimes there's this fallacy of, I think digital immigrants and digital natives was a really good metaphor for the early years of the web to explain people for whom digital was, sort of oxygen rather than an optional extra. I think that was good. But I do think there's a real challenge now in assuming that the people who are younger are 100% online, the people who are older are not online. So because you'll see the number 2 group listed in that group of addicts was the parents, the middle-aged parents who can't get the devices out of their hand. I thought that was fascinating. So what the rise of mobile in general, beyond addiction, has meant for us is really the idea that something was a mobile experience, or how do you define the mobile context, was something we thought a lot about in the mid-2000s. I think now that's something we can't support, where everything is the mobile context. It's not that some users, these are our mobile users and these are our regular users. All of our users are mobile some of the time, and the amount of that time is becoming larger and larger. So I think the rise of mobile and social are definitely reshaping all enterprise businesses, but especially college campuses, where you have a new breed of 17 and 18-year-old coming in with slightly new and different behaviors to adjust for.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember it hasn't been that long, of course, but back when I was in college in Boston, just walking around seeing the number of people that were just glued to their phone, I was like one of the very few people that was like up looking around at what was actually happening.
Yeah.
But beyond mobile devices, I mean, you also write a lot about other emerging technologies out there and new tools and things. What emerging technologies are really catching your attention right now?
I'm really interested, this still partly relates to mobile, but this idea of contextual search. I feel like the things that interest me are not only sort of the interesting software problems or user experience problems to solve, but also what are the implications for the greater social implications for policy and privacy and all these kinds of behavioral changes that are wrought by these new technologies. So contextual search, I think, is a great example, which is often on mobile. How much should my mobile phone be using what it knows about me to inform what I search for? So if it's it knows the temperature outside, right? It knows it's a hot day. It knows I'm walking near the ice cream shop. To what degree should, when I open my phone, ice cream be one of the things that is offered to me? So I think a lot about contextual search. I'm also really interested in, what people, have buzzwordified into the Internet of Things. But to what extent will the spaces we are in, whether that space is our car, or that space is our workplace, or that space is our home, begin to react to the data we carry around with us to inform what we're doing? So, arguably this already exists, but, when my husband's car passes a certain threshold on the Mass Pike, is that when the heat should kick on, rather than manually setting a time at the beginning of the morning? So I think there's a lot more to come in terms of contextual search and in terms of the Internet of Things and how it affects how we live our day-to-day life. Also mildly obsessed with this idea of personal data exhaust, right? This is a jawbone up. A lot of people wearing these and Fitbits. I think we're not yet tapping the possibilities of, what's possible, what's usable from this data we create, and what's fair game for employers or universities to look at. These are all really interesting and important questions about, this data we're creating today that could be used to make our lives more convenient or could be used to invade our privacy. So I think that the jury's still out on, what those rules will be, but I think we're forming them all together.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, privacy plays such a huge role in that, and trust. It's actually something I wrote about a few weeks ago with Shel Israel. He wrote a book called The Age of Context, rather. So yeah, it's definitely a big thing, and I imagine it will be an emerging theme during the conference as well. So what can we expect from you at the conference?
I'm really still muddling with a bunch of questions around experience design and what is the best way to pull in people's personal data into the experience that they have. So I think I'll look to explore something like that. I'm also thinking a lot about design. How do you make effective design and development teams that can iterate and continue to deliver? Because I do think, that might be interesting to some of the people, who are on the client side of the house who are attending. Because it's one thing to get through launch, but how do you think about continuing to deliver experiences, continuing to iterate, and to build that into your culture of how you design and build? Those are 2 areas I'm mulling over.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. I think that, as you mentioned, we'll definitely have people kind of on both sides of the spectrum, and I think that there's probably a lot of inspiration to glean from your experiences at Harvard for sure. So what are you looking forward to about Delight?
I think just the critical mass of people who are thinking about the same kinds of questions, particularly around user experience design. And I feel like uh, beauty is consistently undersold in user experience. I think people often think of minimum viable product and how do we get to where we need to go and what's the functionality we need to have. And of course, those are the underpinning and super important. But I have found that when design experiences are designed beautifully, when you eliminate friction and maximize intuition, that apps can really be transformative. So I'm really interested in connecting with others and learning about what are people seeing as best practices, and how do you take some of this clunky enterprise technology and try to bring some of these wonderful consumer-led, design experiences to that world.
Great. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen Shailin Amin from Uber speaking. I think that he'll be right on your side along with that. I know he's a big proponent of incorporating beautiful into the experience as well as making it, functional and user-centric and delightful.
Just stop making it so tempting to slide right away from the Uber X and into the Uber. So if he could disable that on my app, that would be perfect. That would save a lot of money. But he does have beautiful experiences. But I think of that. I think of Jet Setter. I think of all the small little design interactions I have every day. And how can we learn from that? And how can we do better here at Harvard?
Excellent. Well, I'm so excited to have you out in a few months. And it was really great to connect and hear from you a little bit. Any last thoughts?
No, just really excited to be part of it and to learn from others and to share what we're learning here at Harvard. I think one of the projects we're working on is this Harvard X edX online learning, and I think as there are many more people in the learning business, I think all these companies with content marketing are increasingly in the learning business. So it'll be interesting to see how other or large organizations are incorporating learning into what they do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Perry. It was great to chat with you, and I look forward to talking soon.
Thanks so much, Katie.
Bye.